Hey, what's going on everyone? Welcome back to the channel and thank you so much for tuning into today's video. Hopefully, as always, this video finds you in good health through all these tough times that we're all dealing with, and hopefully the other side is not too far away. I wanted to make a video today kind of going through the install of this K&N intake, why I chose this intake. It kind of ended up falling into my lap for a really good price, and we'll get into that a little bit later into the video. But before we get into today's video, I definitely want to stop for a quick second and take a deep breath. Apparently there's a small subset of subscribers on the channel that are strictly here, so I take a breath, and by all means I'll take what I get. So let's jump into today's video and kind of get into this intake install. Basically, this is K&N's intake. I'm a huge fan of how easy it is to install this intake. I linked another video in the description that kind of talks about the ins and outs of gains that you can get from a cold air intake. This is K&N's performance intake. They have a drop-in filter system as well, but this is kind of their full intake with the elbow pipe as well as a conic filter. I've linked in the description below a really nice video from Palm Beach Dyno that kind of goes over intakes and how those numbers are generated. Sometimes real actual gains, sometimes it's kind of fake gains, and that video does a really great job and an honest way of explaining that. For me, the reason I got this intake is mostly because I want to hear the turbo whistle a little bit more. Definitely not going to hear it like the 7.3 liter that you see off into the distance over on the side. I want to hear the turbo on this 3.5 liter EcoBoost a little bit more, so I thought I'd go with this intake, and this is definitely one of the easiest intakes to install. And in case anyone is wondering, I picked this intake up from a friend of mine who actually had a Raptor for about maybe 28 days and 700 miles, then he traded it in. He was a Trackhawk person, so the Raptor really wasn't for him, but it worked out great for me because I picked this up for $100, and you really can't go wrong with that price. I think it's a really great value add for me specifically because all I'm looking for is sound out of this. There's intakes that offer dual filters with like an H pipe on the filter. That's one of the more performance intensive ones that really maximize when you tune the truck. The install is going to be relatively simple. Usually you want to disconnect the negative terminal on the battery when you're doing any kinds of work, especially because this involves removing a sensor. The reason why I'm a huge fan of this particular intake is because it uses the bottom half of the factory box without replacing that. So you're really only dropping in the conical filter over the flat filter that's here, and then it removes this portion of the tube that's the baffled portion, so it kind of has a more streamlined flow, and then it retains the actual connection pipes to the turbos themselves. So it's a really easy install. K&N claims that you're going to get 5 to 7 horsepower at the wheel out of this intake system based on their dynos. From my experiences installing intakes over the years, you don't get a major noticeable difference with intake installs. It's usually gained when you tune the vehicle to the intake with the extra air, and honestly I'm not going to go down that route. So for me this is more of a sound gain than anything else. Alright, so basically what we want to first do is just undo these two clamps right here. They just pop right out of place. They're going to be reused with the K&N intake system, and then from back here just give it a slight little bump, and it's going to pull that filter out from the tabs in the back. And now this is going to be loose, but don't pull on it too much because we have to undo this band clamp. So I'm going to go ahead and undo that. Once it's loosened enough, you can just remove the factory filter. You can kind of see right here after 6,000 miles how dirty or clean the filter really remains. There's really not much debris in here, so Ford does a really good job of filtering everything out. The base itself is really clean, which is nice, and this filter is definitely very restrictive, so hopefully we're going to alleviate some of that restriction with the K&N conical filter, as well as the removal of these baffles right here. Just keep in mind on the back of the primary tube over here that we're going to be replacing, there's a little connector and sensor that you want to pull out right here. So I'm just going to pull the whole sensor out, and then I'm going to need 2 hands to actually take the sensor out of the connector, and you want to be very delicate with this because you don't want to break it. Alright, with the sensor removed and properly tucked away, you want to go ahead and undo this band clamp, and then the band clamp over here, this one's behind the actual tube itself, and it's a pain to get to, probably the hardest part of the install itself. So I'll go ahead and remove both of those, and we'll be able to take this whole tube right out. So I went ahead and loosened up this band clamp as well as this band clamp up here. This band clamp right here was definitely by far the hardest part of the install so far, mainly because the nut sits on the back side of the tube. Made it really difficult to actually get to with the socket. So I went ahead and used a flathead screwdriver. It just made it a lot easier to kind of guide it right onto the bolt and loosen it up. Now with it all loosened up and the sensor removed, you can go ahead and start shimmying it out. I like to shimmy out the bottom portion of the tube. Slowly shimmy it upwards. You don't want to put too much pressure on it, and once that's out, you can kind of rotate it just a little and take the top portion of that tube out, and then make sure you go ahead and take this coolant line and remove it from this little bracket. Just like that, the whole piece is out, and we're going to put the new one in. Now you want to take the bigger coupler, and I prefer to align it this way where these bolts are facing the front end of the vehicle. That way I don't end up with the issue like I had taking the other band clamp out where the bolt is on the back side. You want to go ahead and put this right on the factory tube. Definitely make sure it's snug all the way down to the bottom where it sits flush on the seam of the factory inlet tube. I don't like to put this one on. I like to put it on the actual tube itself and then slide the whole tube over. This one's, it's better to put it on beforehand. And before we slide the new tube in, you got to remember that there was a sensor back here. So we're going to go ahead and slide that sensor right in. Nice circular motion, make sure the tip of it does not actually hit anything. With it in all the way, you want to make sure that this top tab is actually sitting flush against the grommet. Sometimes they say you can remove the little blue seal to make it fit a little flusher, but I don't want to lose it, so I just kind of turned it all the way in. It's not going to come out the other side, and it's not going to be able to come out this way, so it fits fine. As long as this little tab right here is sitting flush against the grommet, you are good to go. Hopefully the camera can catch that. You can see the little sensor right inside. So now we're going to go ahead and shimmy this pipe back onto the factory inner tubes. Now that we have the whole tube in place, we can go ahead and drop in the filter. Make sure you don't tighten any of the band clamps until everything's kind of in its place. Everything's just kind of hand tightened so it doesn't move out of place. And we're going to go ahead and drop in the big filter. And this right here is why we are all here. I'm going to go ahead and slide this on. Again, I put the band clamps on. You can go ahead and put the tabs back in once everything is aligned and in place, and that's going to hold the actual intake box in place. Now go ahead and tighten everything down. Make sure everything is fit snug. There's nothing loose. Go ahead and put the connector back into the sensor on the back side of the inlet tube, and we should be good to go. Alrighty guys, so I went ahead and tightened all the clamps down. It was relatively easy to do. I'm just going to kind of go over some of my install notes at the end here. I think it's a really good system. It's really easy to install. $100 is definitely worth it for me. It retails about $280. I honestly think $280 is not that bad either. There are other kits out there that have dual filters that run you somewhere around $700-800, and just for sound, I think this is going to get the job done. Overall, a very easy install. It took me no more than 20 minutes. In terms of negatives, the only thing I can think of is that this coolant tube had a bracket on the factory tube, and it does not on the K&N tube, so that's something K&N definitely missed. So let's go ahead and put all the tools away, and I'm going to get this thing out on the road and share my impressions with you guys. Oh yeah, you can definitely hear the turbo whistle a lot more with this. I'm going to go ahead and get on the highway and really give it a full send. Yeah, there's just a nice little blow off whistle that comes right at the end of that with the intake that you didn't get with the factory setup, so definitely loving it. You can definitely hear the turbo whistle. It's very, very noticeable. The camera is not going to do it justice. I can already tell when I'm going to be editing this, I'm not going to pick up any of this sound in the actual video itself, but you can hear the turbo whistle just ever so slightly at high speeds and definitely at lower speeds. And guys, bear with me. I know it's a little shaky. This is my first time actually recording in motion. Alrighty guys, so it got windy really quick, so I am going to keep the outro a little bit short. Kind of my final impressions after driving around for about 20 or 30 miles with the intake is that it definitely gives me the turbo whistle that I was looking for. I think it's a really good budget value intake on the market. There are more expensive ones that I think will give you more performance with the right tuning to go with it, but I really wasn't looking for performance out of this as much as I was looking for the turbo whistle, and I think that's what this intake gave me. And for $100, I definitely could not go wrong, and even at the $280 retail, I think it's still one of the better value intakes on the market for the Raptor. So if you have any other questions about this intake or the Raptor, definitely let me know in the comment section below. And again, if you enjoyed this video, there's a thumbs up button down below for you to let the world know, so go ahead and hit that button. And until next time, I will see you guys in the comment section below.